the slides and everything. I'm just going to keep it up the way that it is. So for the recertification, if you're a current volunteer, which means you've gone through the phase 1 training, every 3 years we ask that you come back and get recertified. And I know we've had a lot of people that have taken advantage of the recertification being online, which is great. But we're going to go ahead and go through the slides here. So make it work. So with the different things that we're going to discuss, it's just how to refresh your skills, that type of thing, sampling procedures. And normally we use a participant form to make sure that everybody, has filled something out showing that they've been to a class. But what I may do is just have everybody maybe put in the chat box or maybe even email me afterwards that's on this, so that we can make sure that we've got some way of refreshing that everybody, that's been on the recertification has got credit. This slide kind of talks about how we're set up for Watershed Watch in Kentucky, which is a statewide, we've got a statewide board, which I serve on, and there's quite a few of us that serve on it. You'll notice that our board of directors is at the bottom. We have a basin. Each basin has a steering committee or a board of directors. If you're not currently on that, the board is always looking for volunteers to step up. With the SALT, they have their meetings preset. It's the second Tuesday of every month, and they do it by Zoom. Before it was a conference call, but they've been doing it by Zoom. The meetings normally last an hour, about an hour. But if there's any kind of skills that you have that you can bring to the basin and help participate and make decisions for the Salt River Basin, that's helpful. You may have a background in grant writing, or you may just enjoy looking and working with new people. Maybe you want to be a trainer. All those things are things that we need. From that board of directors, we've got a sampling event coordinator who works with the lab managers, the science advisors, area coordinators or runners, and then of course our samplers are at the top, because if you have a volunteer water monitoring program and you don't have any volunteers, you're already at the bottom of the barrel, just so you know. Of course, our goal is to get people out into the real world so they can see the conditions firsthand, this is actually pretty helpful when we're doing the in-person in-person trainings. You can usually tell if it's the first time that somebody's really been that close to a stream or standing in a stream, and they're looking around and taking in the conditions of that waterway after attending the first part of the training. So they're actually looking for things all of a sudden when they go to the water. And I used to hear people say this all the time: once you've been trained in Watershed Watch, you will never look at water the same way again. And I have to say that's very true. You just never really look the same. Every time I go over a bridge, I'm stretching my neck to look, and I don't think I'm the only one that does that. Of course, Watershed Watch, we work with our volunteers. We try to provide you with the tools and the information that you need to educate not only yourselves, but work with you on how you can inform other people that you come in contact with about our program. You can see on, there's an article in there on Hingston Creek. So we have some volunteers that kind of take their information and they go to the next, to another level where they want to possibly get a grant to help fix some of the issues in their water. and Larry George and Barry Tawning is two of those volunteers with the licking basin. Of course, we have our conferences every year, which is a great way for people to meet other volunteers and hear about what we're doing. But it also helps you to be able to get the information that you need if you want to go and talk to, you know, your neighbors or your family, your friends, even your community leaders. We have several different basins that actually get funding from different county officials or things like that, and that helps in the basin to get more funding, because we're always looking for funding. Ways that you can use your information, of course, personal decision making is one. When we talk about local action, of course, anything that you do as a volunteer with the Salt River Watershed Watch or any other Watershed Watch program, you know, we want to make sure that if you're going to speak before, you know, a committee board or anything like that, that your board of directors or your steering committee are aware of it. We just want to make sure that the information that you have, that, you know, you've got everything that you need, and that we're aware that you're going to talk to others about it. You know, it could be various different groups that may invite you to come and speak. But we want to make sure that the board of directors, of course, always knows. But your information, like I said, you can use it for grant applications, watershed planning, scientific research. We have quite a few different ones that use their sampling data for different types of scientific research or different programs that they're working with other than Watershed Watch. We have standard operating procedures. If you've already been trained, then you've got these two booklets, which are with the phase 1 testing equipment. So you've got the field chemistry and the grab sample. We do have SOPs on the kywater.org website for that go along with our little flip booklets. I have read them many times, so I'm good, but if you want to read them, they're there on the website for you to do so. We are still in the process of trying to modify and update the one for our phase 2 training, our habitat and biological training. So that SOP is not up there, but we are working on that one to try to get it completed. Of course, since you've already been trained, you know that all of your sampling materials come by mail. We'll generally send you an email out. On an average, we try to send it out maybe a month to 3 weeks prior to a sampling event. Ask you if you're going to participate so we can get you registered. There's a reason behind all that. You know, if you don't respond that you're going to sample, then we're not going to, you know, waste materials and funding to mail something to you. But, you know, we try to work with everybody to, even on a last minute note, to try to make sure everybody has a sample bottle and their containers, if, you know, and their paperwork and everything, if they want to sample. But you get them by mail. So when you receive your sampling packet, open it up. I quit putting fragile on packages a few years back because I think it's an accelerator for the postal service to see how fragile it really is. There are times that you might get a bottle that's been damaged, you know, in the mail, and this gives us time to get you another one. Of course, you've got vinyl gloves that come to you, that, especially since COVID started, those are very important that you use. You'll have your instructions and that type of thing. But when you get it, make sure you open it up. If there's something in there that you don't have or that you need, the paperwork can be sent to you via email. Of course, your bottles will have to get to you another way, which luckily for those in Louisville, and close by, Microbac Lab is always willing to help us with that. So in some cases, we can send you to the lab to pick up a bottle prior to. The Be Safe, this is in all of our PowerPoints, and we just want you to make sure that you're aware and cautious when you're going out into the water. You know, if we've had a lot of rain and the waterways are really full at flood level or even close to flood level, you know, we want you to take precautions. We don't want you to be in the water. If you're using chest waders, if you're wearing chest waders, you need to make sure that you're also careful wearing those. If you slip and fall in the water, you know, those fill up pretty quickly. I have chest waders, but I never put the straps over my shoulders. I just have a drawstring that I kind of pull to keep them up. And of course, you know, to make sure that you always have permission from a landowner if you're crossing property. That is a big thing. Most of the time people don't mind us sampling or anything like that, but we don't want to be trespassing or anything. So we want to make friends and with those that are still trying to figure out what we're doing. So make sure that you've always got permission if you're crossing private property. Equipment wise, we provide you with everything that you need, but you will need to get some distilled water. And this is so that you can actually rinse your testing equipment off between uses. If you've got more than one sampling site, you have to be able to rinse your field chemistry and your pH containers and all that type of stuff off in between testing at different sites so you don't cross-contaminate. Your waste containers, when you're using the distilled water or anything like that, and to rinse anything off, that will go into your waste container, as well as the used reagents that you've used in your dissolved oxygen sample bottle and your little pH cylinder as well. One thing that I do want to say on the waste containers is you need to get into a habit of rinsing those. You know, we tell folks that if you are on city sewer, you can dispose of this just because there's not a whole lot in there, but you can flush it down your drain. Now, if you're on a septic tank, we ask you not to do that. If you're going to the lab, if you are delivering your samples to the lab, don't leave this container with them, but you could ask them if they would rinse out this container because they actually have a specific sink that they use for stuff like that. So, you know, they can rinse it out and hand it back to you if you don't want, you know, if you're on septic tank or if you don't want to actually flush it through your own drain. Your equipment should be stored someplace that is climate controlled. So not in the trunk of your car. You know, if it's in your garage, most garages are not climate controlled. So you want to make sure that the hot and cold is not interfering with the reagents that are in your test kits. Of course, you want to keep it out of the reach of children and small pets, or small children and pets. The white pan that has your equipment in it that you get at your testing when you're being trained, just slide it in a trash bag or something like that and put it in the top of an interior closet, if nothing else. At least that way your children and your pets can't get into it, you know, because there are things in there that could hurt them. Your chemicals, you've got enough to do 50 tests. So, you know, even in between sampling, if you want to monitor your waterways by testing the field chemistry, you can do that. We have a form at kywater.org It's a monthly monitoring form where you can just record. We have quite a few people that do that, and they're able to actually tell if something's happening that's different than their normal sampling time. You can also use it for educational purpose. You know, if you work with 4-H or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, even a classroom, you know, with students and stuff, you can use your test kit and demonstrate to them, you know, what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you're looking for. Anything that you need as far as batteries for your conductivity meter, if any of your equipment goes bad, anything like that, even the titrator or the little glass sampling bottle or the little pH vials, anything like that, if anything is damaged or lost, just reach out to me. You know, we've got equipment that we can replace those pieces parts for you. And I do see where you write on your chain of custody forms, you know, that you need new batteries or something like that. But you can also reach out at other times other than that if something is needed. Okay, chemical safety. The dissolved oxygen uses a strong acid, which is kind of has the consistency of bleach. The pH reagent is flammable, so if you smoke, please don't smoke while you're doing your chemistry test. The gloves that we send to you, those are not only to protect yourself from what's in the water, but it's also to protect our samples. So wearing those gloves will help you to make sure that you're not, you know, getting anything on you that can hurt you or anything like that. You know, if you've got a cut or anything like that on your hand, you're going to feel it if some of those chemicals get in there. The MSDS sheets are on the kywater.org website as well. When you receive new chemicals, whether that's in your sampling sampling packet or however, the old ones, if you want to, you can mail them back to me, or you can hang on to them, and you can actually dispose of those by, they say, by putting them down the drain, but I usually take them to the state lab and they dispose of them. So, you know, even if you want to send them back to me, that's fine. And I can make sure that they're disposed of. What to do if you get a chemical on you? They say just to flush it with water. Of course, and you know, I've been doing this since 2000. I really don't know of anyone that's ever been injured. If they have, they've never told me about it by any of the chemicals or anything. You know, just realize that there are, you know, these are chemicals. So if the wind's blowing, you know, try to turn yourself around to where the wind's not blowing into your face. That might actually blow, you know, a reagent, you know, onto your face or anything. Make sure that you wear your glasses, whether that's reading glasses or sunglasses, something like that. If you absolutely feel like you have to have the crazy looking goggles, you'll have to provide those for yourself. But those things are there to make sure that you are safe. Of course, on the sampling, you all already know, you enter downstream and you walk up to the location where you're going to collect your field chemistry and your E. coli sample. You want to do your chemistry first because of that hold time. And we've been telling folks that when you walk up to that location, of course, this is the location that you have on your chain of custody form. So if anything changes and you have to do it like from bankside, make sure you record that in the comments box, that the sample was collected bankside, maybe due to high water or something like that. But when you go to collect your field chemistry, you want to be maybe a foot below where you're actually going to fill your E. coli bottle. That way, if you're stirring up anything, it's not going to end up in your sample bottle. So there are three different flow rate conditions that we ask that you don't collect a sample. Of course, if it's dry, that means there's no water. Ponded is that still stagnant water where it's not connecting. So there's no connecting flow. I do sometimes have people that during a ponded or even a flood situation, they'll do their field chemistry from the bank side. Sometimes ponded, you can't always do it, but you know, if it's flooded, we don't want you in the water at all. And sometimes if it's bank full, we don't want you in the water. But during those conditions, we ask that you not collect an E. coli sample. If you are going to attempt to do field chemistry, that's fine. Just mark on there, no sample collected, you know, and I'll know if it's because it was ponded or flooded, of course. 48-hour rainfall. There are links in here that you can use, and these are also in this PowerPoint link. These links are, you can click on. So if you go to that kywater.org, you can always see all of the training PowerPoints, and there's a recertification one there. And you can click on these links and save them into your computer if you'd like. But the 48-hour rainfall, if you've got a rain gauge, that's absolutely fine. If you want to use, you know, WeatherBug or the news or something like that to tell you what kind of rain has fallen, that's fine as well. Sampling site coordinates and photos. Of course, you've already got a sampling site if you're sampling. We do ask that you try and collect photographs at least once a year, usually in the summer event. And what we want you to do is when you first arrive at your sampling point, before you do your field chemistry or anything, we want you to be there at the site, take a photo upstream, turn around, take one downstream. And then if you would just turn the camera and point it down at the water and take a photograph that way. And that way we can kind of see the bottom of that stream or waterway. You can email them to me and just label them. Sometimes you may have to send more than one email, you know, just depending on the size of the photograph. Or you can send them to ollietheotter@ky.gov. I check his email too. But that kind of gives us an idea of what sampling sites look like. And believe it or not, those photographs help if things start changing on your sites to where, you know, maybe all of a sudden you're getting a different reading for your oxygen or your pH, that sometimes those photographs will help us to see if there's anything else there that, you know, is an issue. Of course, your field chemistry, you know, I'm not going to really go through all these steps because you all know all this, but, you know, when you go to do your chemistry readings or testing or anything else, make sure that you rinse the little glass bottle for the dissolved oxygen and the cap, as well as the tubes and the caps for the pH. Just rinse them and toss the water behind you. Your conductivity meters, those need to be calibrated the night before or the morning of. This one says 720, but the calibration fluid that we gave everyone in the little cup is a 700. So your instructions will tell you which way to, you know, what number to calibrate it to. There is a place on your chain of custody form that will, you can record the date that you actually calibrated your meter so that we know that it's been done in that kind of, you know, that 24-hour time. There's also a YouTube video of me showing you how to calibrate that crazy green one. So we've been working on some other videos as well. So just kind of stay in tune. Remember to rinse all of your equipment once you're finished with it. Let's see, I'm going to kind of scroll a little bit. So for the E. coli, of course, with our E. coli, which is our main sampling that we do now, those bottles are sterile. So we do not want you to rinse them. After you've done your field chemistry, you'll take the cap off of that bottle and you will fill it up and cap it, put it down into your cooler with an ice water slurry mix. The labs know what to do. They know how to pipe out enough, but because those bottles are sterile,
Joanne,
if you sit there and try to tap the water out to get below that 100 ml line, if you go below it, you can't reuse the bottle. So I'd rather you just fill it, cap it, and put it in there and let the labs handle it. They know how to take care of that. Anything other than E. coli, you know, you'll have instructions for, but, you know, E. coli is what we have been doing for the last several years. Keeping your samples, of course, immersed in the ice water slurry mix. Hold times, our hold times for E. coli is 6 hours. We actually have 8, but we give those 2 hours to the lab to make sure that they have time to get everything taken care of. Your chain of custody forms, of course, you all know there's things that are pre-populated on there, but we want to make sure that you record the time and the date that you fill your E. coli sample bottle. That's the time and the date that gets registered there. Places, of course, for your field chemistry and field observations. If anything is changed, your phone number, email, anything like that, you can just scratch through on the form and put the new information in. When you are running samples, delivering samples to the lab, anything like that, you want to make sure that whoever's collected the sample, which is you, the sampler, that you sign on the relinquish by, you record the time and the date, and you watch that other person, whoever it is you're handing it off to, whether it's another volunteer or the lab, that they sign it, record the time and the date exactly like yours. In other words, they need to match. If you're running samples for people, you want to make sure that that is done, that everything matches. That shows that someone has been in control of that sample at all times. Of course, because you are qualified as a, you know, you've been trained as a sampler, you can sample for somebody else. You just scratch through their name, just a simple line through their name and record your name, because the person that collected that sample and the first signature need to match. The chain of custody ID, or the COC ID, I just like to mention, this is, if you're using an old chain of custody form that you've already previously used and you're scratching out or trying to white out numbers from maybe a previous event, the way that the information gets entered into that KGS data portal is through that chain of custody or that COC ID number. So if it's an old chain of custody form that you've tried to cover up and just print out, cross that number out. That will tell me and the lab that I need to record a new ID number, because once that number's been used in the KGS data portal, it won't allow me to use it again. So I don't know why, but every now and then I get some that have reused forms, even though they had a new form. But that's just so you all know what that number is for. The results go onto the KGS data portal. I tell folks to give me about 30 days to get the field chemistry in, and then once I have the lab results, I can send those in to KGS and they will upload them. But until the field data is in there, you won't see the lab data. So remember, I'm doing this for 8 basins across the state. There is an environmental safety slide that is also in your booklets. The top one is the number to the Division of Water. So if you've got an issue or if you see something that you feel like you need to report, you can call them and let them know. If it's an emergency, in other words, maybe you see oil or gas or sewage or something like that spilling into a waterway, the environmental response team at the bottom, they are on call 24/7. So you can leave a message there with them, or sometimes you'll have to leave a message and they'll call you back, but they will get back with you. This is just a way to find the links through the kywater.org. You can click on the Salt River Basin, or you can go to srww.org and it will also tell you information about your basin. The phase 2, the habitat and the biological, if you haven't been trained in it, those are workshops that we can set up and work with you on. It gives a little bit more in-depth look into what's happening on that waterway, because we look at the macroinvertebrates and the critters that live there. Do you all have any questions?
Just to let everybody know, we have muted you if you have come on. So if you want to ask a question, you have to unmute yourself. My question is, how many people are monitoring in the state of Kentucky with Watershed Watch?
We've got probably a little over 3,000 that monitor across the state. And I probably have to look, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but we also have the lake monitoring program, which is totally different. So we have volunteers that are monitoring our lakes as well. And that program has taken off really, really well. But yeah, on average, about 3,000 across the state.
My second question is, how has other watershed watches in the Commonwealth of Kentucky faced and dealt with COVID? Are they sampling on a regular basis? Has the number of people sampling decreased? What's the official word?
Well, for 2020, it was very different. Of course, our May event was canceled because of COVID. And in the July event, I only had 2 basins that sampled, and that was the Kentucky and the Licking. But for our fall sampling, all of our basins participated. The biggest thing on the sampling is, the way everything was in 2020, people just wanted to be safe, and they were so unsure with if they were standing in a waterway, could they contract COVID and take it home and that type of thing. And our recommendations to everyone, and it still is just to be cautious. The KWA did a really good presentation. They hosted a presentation by Tamara Sluice that on COVID and on testing, and it was a really, really informative webinar that they did. And just being careful and cautious of what you're doing, wearing your gloves, and wearing your, trying to make sure that you're using your hand sanitizer and stuff like that, to make sure that you're protecting yourselves. You know, we get into a habit of collecting our sample and then just climbing into the car. And with COVID, we were telling folks, you know, that we really needed for you all to be even more cautious, to make sure that you were able to use hand sanitizer, to make sure that you were not cross-contaminating or bringing any kind of contaminants into your car, and then to remove your boots and that type of thing before you went into your home, to shower after you got home and that type of stuff, just to make sure that you were a little bit more cautious and careful. The majority of our volunteers, we still had a really good turnout in the fall event. And we had a good one in the July event. I think people just wanted to get out. But, you know, it was definitely a different kind of time. And we're still not totally out of the clear, you know, on everything. Of course, the vaccine's out there, so I know people are getting vaccinated, which hopefully is going to bring us back to a more normal state at some point.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Joanne Palmer? We have 7 minutes before we start our official workshop. And Joanne, could you de-share your screen, unless if you have some other pictures you want to show?
Oh, no, I'll stop sharing. I just wanted to make sure. How's that?
Well, we see a big picture. There we go.
I have a question. This is Fran. The slide said that after 3 years of sampling that you replenish the chemicals, yet we can do it 50 samplings with what we were given. Which one are we following? Or should we be getting a replacement of the chemicals?
Yes, since you've gone through the recertification, and that's the biggest thing is, you know, there's times that I'll have volunteers that'll say, I've never gotten new chemicals. But then, you know, my next question is, have you gone through a recertification? Because that's usually our way of knowing that, yes, they've gone through a refresher and now they're due for new chemicals. So if you, with you going through the recertification, yes, you will get new chemicals. We're just got to take care of that. And that'll probably be in the spring sampling packets for everybody that's participated.
Thank you.
Joanne, I think the question was what comes first, the 50 samples or they expire? And the answer is when they expire after 3 years. You have extra chemicals if you wanted to take additional samples.
Right.
But
and
really, it's once those chemicals are open, then their shelf life becomes, that's when the clock starts, and you really need to replace it after 3 years.
Yeah, that, you know, I have a lot of people that say, oh, well, my bottle says that it's expiring. I try to tell people not to pay attention to the dates on the sample or the reagent bottles, because I do keep up with when people get their chemicals and when they're recertified. And it's like you said, Russ, when you open them up and air is entered in, that's when that three years starts ticking. Anybody else?
And how about if you bring your chemicals down to the panhandle of Florida? Does that make the chemicals last shorter time or longer time, or does it matter?
I'm sorry, say that again. If you don't keep them in a climate controlled area, is that what you're asking?
The chemicals are fine, David. It's the person that they're going to croak.
I didn't catch everything that he said, but if I will tell you this, if they're not kept in a climate controlled area, the climate does cause the reagents to weaken. At least that's the information I've been given by our companies.
Well, we're starting to have a few more people register. We're going to get started in a few minutes. It's 5:12. Our plan is to start right at 5:15. While we're waiting, we're asking everybody to go into the chat and type their name and where they live and what stream they're on. I did post in the chat the Kentucky Watershed Viewer. If you haven't checked it out, you can really zoom in to see what your watershed is. It's quite a nice little app that our state government has created. Is that a Kentucky Division of Water piece there, Joanne, do you know? The Kentucky Watershed Viewer?
Yes.
Just to let everybody know, we are recording this session, and so for people who cannot make it, and so please be polite. We're also saving the chat. I put up a very simple poll that we're asking people just to take, and we'll get started in a minute. And really, the first one should say, I am not a volunteer yet. And so we're just looking to see who is online, and it's not totally accurate because we have a few people. We'll give another minute.
David, I wonder if we can have the poll go up later on, or if that'll be too confusing.
Well, we can do it, but every time you relaunch the poll, it starts from 0. And so this is the early bird gets the worm. How about another minute or two on here, and then we'll wait till 5:16 and get started.
Do you want to bring up the agenda so people that might not have seen it yet can take a look while we wait?
We can only do 2 things at a time.
He likes